Well. It's Tuesday, October 22nd. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harrison. This is the Audible YouTube channel. It's time to go on the hot seat. First, footballguys.com is the website. I appreciate you joining me here every Tuesday at this time. Also on Saturdays at 11 a.m. for the Ask Me Anything live streams. I always have a good time there. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. You can like us or not. We'll be okay either way. If you previously competed all those, let's get busy here. I have a great guest. Every week. Last week, Ryan Weiss from Football Guys was on, did a fantastic job. Today, it's not a guest from Football Guys, but kind of is. It's Mike Dempsey, my co-host on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio and on the Daily Update podcast, which you can get every morning. It drops at about 5:30 a.m. and we run you down on all the news. And also catch us every day on Sirius, pretty much every day but Wednesday or Tuesday, every day but this day.
Jeez.
I can't keep track. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to midnight on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Saturday night, 8 to 11 on NFL Radio and the Fantasy Channel simulcast. And Sunday, you can catch me on the pregame show. Mike's doing Jaguars-y stuff then. Mike, how are you today?
I'm well. I just want to know, how many years have we been doing this together? Not this particular stream, but what, 13? I don't know. It's like 13 years, right?
So this goes.
When do I go from guest to family? That's all I want to know. When do I become family?
Let's run this back to how it started, how we met, because there's a Football Guys connection even to that. Mike has a terrestrial, they call that, radio show in Jacksonville. You can see it. And by the way, he's at MD_1010XL. That 1010XL is his station in Jacksonville, the Jaguars flagship station. But back in the day, I want to say this was maybe 2000 and what? 4, 5, 6, 7?
4-ish, yeah, 2004-ish, around
2004-ish. So the great David Dodds was making appearances on Dempsey's radio program to kind of run him through the rankings and see how everything's going. One day, David Dodds got sick, and so I was doing stuff for Football Guys at the time. And so they called me up and said, hey, can you jump on this show with this guy? I said, he sounds like kind of okay, sure, I'll do it. And I did it, and we immediately clicked. Dempsey preferred my style to David Dodds. All due respect to David Dodds. Some people are more comfortable in the setting than others, and I was a little more comfortable. And it just progressed from there until the next thing you know, we have a serious show. I could give the whole history, but here we are today, getting ready to talk waiver wires in Week 8 of the NFL season. And it's great to have you on, Mike. And I see you're wearing this particular ball cap. I believe it has to do with the baseball.
It does. World Series begins, as you well know, on Friday night. And tonight's opening night for the New York Knicks. Thank you very much as well. But I'm repping the Yankees because they're in the World Series, Bob, for the 41st time. But again, this is all lore that you're well familiar with.
I hear it a lot. I don't really pay that much attention to it.
I know you don't.
Interesting week of football. You know, we talked about the Monday night games, the horrible sadness, the mayhem coming out for the Buccaneers. By the way, the mayhem on the other side of the ball in that game was phenomenal, right? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, all these players turning out to be exactly what we want. We're going to talk about a possible waiver wire pickup here from that Baltimore team. It's look at Mr. Scampers, the LA contingent speaking up. Oh, Kamara just got extended. I wonder if that's a prelude to a trade.
That's
maybe
interesting.
Not. It is interesting because that was the talk, right? This week that there was rumors that he had demanded a trade, and then he came out and said, "No, I didn't demand a trade."
I don't think this is a prelude to a trade. I mean, it might be. What do I know, right? I'm not in the New Orleans front office, but I think Alvin Kamara, this is more a sign like, okay, you want to be here. You've expressed being here, because if you are going to trade him to another team, they'll work out the extension that they want, right? It's kind of like, well, here's Kamara and here's the brand new extension that they signed him to as well. So I think he's staying.
I think he is too. I feel like when he made a stand in the summer, and he made a stand. He didn't show up for OTAs, didn't do a lot of things, and left one day early from the mandatory mini camp, all that. But I think he appreciated the offense. I appreciated the offense too through 2 weeks. Not so much since then. They'll need to figure it out. So anyhow. We want to talk waiver wires here, people. I know you'll have questions. We'll get to your questions as we run through these things. I may wait to take them until we get to the position in question, but we'll roll through some stuff here because there is some good. I think there's some good targets of opportunity. Also, we're going to do a week where nobody's on bye. We've got every single team playing. So that's a wait 1 minute. Steve wants help with the trade. Mike Dempsey loves to trade more than anything
let's
else
trade.
in the world.
Let's deal.
Steve, give me that trade question. While we're waiting for the trade question to come in, I just wanted to get your general approach, Mike, because you've been playing a long time. I think you're thought of, a lot by people as just like, oh, he's just the golden voice, a hosting talent of unparalleled ability. Yet I have played against you in fantasy leagues for the entire time we've known each other, and I know you as something else, like one of the most competitive players and successful players I've gone against. So what is your approach with the waiver wire in general?
By the half my leagues, I am done because I've got nothing left. I just like to go big early, Bob, because I feel like at the beginning of the year, you've got the best pool of players. You have the deepest pool of players you're going to have. And we all get these notions in our head of how everything's going to play out. And then we get course corrected immediately, sometimes slapped in the face. Like, this is not going to be the reality of this season. So that's for me. Some other people like to slow play it. Let's see how it plays out over a few weeks. Right? And you're not alone in that. Right. But I just feel like I've had success. I trust my own instincts. And so I'm aggressive. It's kind of like trading, right? It's a volume game to me. I feel like my instincts are good in trading. I'm not going to win every trade, but I'm going to be happy with the result of the trades more often than not. So I try to trade as often as possible. So I feel like I can, sometimes I swing and miss on the waiver wire. Sometimes I invest a bunch of money in Carson Steele, right? I mean, it happens to everybody, but other times I invest a bunch of money in a league winner in week one. So to me, I'm not like about what percentage. I think it's tough to give people, from me, a percentage to put in fab, right? Because I don't know how much you have left. I don't know what your league is like, who's aggressive, right? So, but my theory is that there are always going to be 3 or 4 people that hold their fab budget tight early in the season. Well, so if this great opportunity rises up here in week 7, week 8, all these guys have all the ammunition they need to outbid me anyway. So why don't I be aggressive early and then just, there are several leagues where I've got a little bit of fab left and I'm going all in on whatever I need at that position this week. And then I'll work $0 bids, or I'll work first come, first serve the rest of the way and hope it gets me through.
So I'm more of a cheapskate. I try to play more proactively, well ahead, grabbing when everyone else was grabbing Carson Steele. I was grabbing Kareem Hunt while he was still on the practice squad. But, I think, and that's the thing, I think everything is a gamble, with these players. When you're taking your chances and you're paying for one big game, you might be paying for just that one big game, and that's the only big game they get. But other times, the one guy that sticks out to me, Mike, was Kyren Williams. You jumped on him so fast the year he emerged with the Rams that it was mind-blowing. It was soul-crushing because no one had a chance.
Well, I mean, sometimes it works, right? And if you get that guy, if you picked up Jordan Mason, if you didn't have him this year, look what you got out of him right up until recently when he got banged up. I mean, he was among the league's leading rushers. Sometimes you get that. Other times you get a guy who maybe has a positive impact for a week or two and they're looking to upgrade from him, or maybe they go deep into their own practice squad and bring up a rookie or something along those lines. Look, you just can't expect to be right every single time. So if you do trust yourself, then go ahead and make those bids, be aggressive, and feel like you said, Bob, it pays to play ahead. I wasn't unaware of the chance that Kareem Hunt could turn out to be the guy, but it's even more about the little things. If you know that next week your defense is on a bye, but it's not a defense that you want to drop, maybe they're one of the most high scoring defenses, or the same, like maybe you have Brandon Aubrey, a kicker, right? And he's just the best. And you see a particular matchup where you're like, wow, I'd like to get that guy next week. We'll get him this week. If you know you're going to have a guy on the end of your bench that you're going to drop anyway. Now I get also, like, what I like to do, I like to pick up, I'm in several local leagues where Blake Corum has been available lately. And while I don't see any reason why he's going to push Kyren Williams to the side, if Kyren Williams is to get hurt, Blake Corum could take on a significant role. So those are the kind of guys that every week I'm looking to grind the bottom of my own roster and just pick those guys up for free and roster them. If something happens, you've already beat everyone to the punch. If nothing happens, you can throw them back in the pool next week if you want to.
That's my key. I think you have to get lucky either way, and I'd rather get lucky super cheap than super expensive. But when you get lucky super expensive, it's just as good, sometimes even better. Theo Greminger in the house. You could listen to the on-demand of our show from Saturday night. Theo was a guest, did a great job there, as he always does. Always was on the couch. Also was on the couch last week with Sigmund. Great episode. All right, Mike. Let's start running through this.
We got a trade. Let's go.
He's setting the battlefield here. Steve // He's got Stafford, Nix, and Dak, Henry, Kamara, Aaron Jones, Chubb, Chandler, Juju, McConkey, Tyreek, McLaurin, BJT. All right, that's a big list. Being offered CMC, what would you give up for him? The guy needs quarterbacks and is asking for Dak and BTG and Brian Thomas Jr. right now.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
All right, I need that list up, and I cannot remember all those guys.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I deal away Dak. It's fine. You know, like coming into the season, if you had Dak, Stafford, and Nix, you'd be like, well, Dak is clearly the most valuable one, but it's not proving to be that necessarily. But boy, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is really coming on here, Bob. And, you know, I don't know. That might be a lot.
Yeah, the numbers for it would be too much for me. He also says the guy has Kupp, Kenneth Walker, Saquon, and Adams. I don't know if that helps us any bit. I mean,
you might be able to get Kupp back in a deal if you add, like, give away Brian Thomas Jr. You're rolling the dice on healthy, guys being healthy down the stretch here. But, we're going to get into multiple layers of this. If he needs quarterback, okay, that's great. You've got quarterback options. And out of those three, I don't know if I'd hang on to any one in particular. The fact that he has Kupp, maybe he'd be interested in Stafford. Make that deal before those guys get split up potentially on a, in a real NFL trade. But I just feel like BTJ is a guy that I want to start every week now. I mean,
I agree.
And I don't know what McCaffrey's going to be when he comes back.
I don't know if anyone else here has if that's the value they're looking for. I don't see anyone else on that list to me. Well, I mean, Terry McLaurin, sure. Tyreek Hill, sure. But I mean, of the outlier guys, I don't see anyone on this list that would probably live up and meet the value that guy's looking for.
Maybe look at these running backs that he has, Bob.
Yeah, Henry, maybe one of the running backs.
Kamara, Aaron Jones, and Chubb. Does he need CMC?
No, that would be the better approach, I think. Would be offering one of the. Well, he doesn't need that, but like if I was going to give something up rather than one of my top three receivers, because I don't think anyone below that, Juju, McConkey, I don't think they're going to make the grade. One of those running backs might, and if you're getting CMC and you think he's good, but that's a bit of a gamble. They're playing for league-winning upside when you might already have it, Nick Chubb, although I don't like the offense.
How about this? Would you offer, how about Dak, Aaron Jones, and Ty Chandler if he wants him in the deal? Because that's a lot of roster space. Having the guys handcuffed, it's been great. Aaron Jones, when healthy, has been performing well. But if you had Henry and Kamara and you held on to your wide receivers and you've got Chubb now, who maybe is getting into a range where you could feel comfortable starting him in as a flex this week, possibly by next week. You get through this week with Henry Kamara, you load up your flex with a wide receiver. You hope you get Tua back and Tyreek Hill's value rises. And I think that might be something, maybe you say, here's Dak and Aaron Jones for CMC. You get a running back you can start right away. You get a quarterback. And if the guy goes, well, I need Ty Chandler. Okay, then you can seem magnanimous and throw him in. Or you can say, okay, well, give me a little extra piece back on the other side. You're going to cut somebody anyway to make room for this. But I think that'd be more my approach. A running back I have plus the quarterback that you're going to include. And honestly, I'd let him pick the quarterback that he wanted out of this trio.
So he'd be okay for Dak with CMC. It's a super flex. So they're all starting two quarterbacks.
Oh, it's a super flex.
I'm not letting go of my quarterback for that, given the rest of the team. That just answered the question for me.
Boy, I don't know though. If it's just Dak for CMC, I think I might roll the dice here and roll with Stafford and Nix, and then just continually work the waiver wire, pick up the targets of opportunity. Maybe Marcus Mariota gets a spot start this week. Maybe Gardner Minshew is out there. Whoever you get in that third spot, you're not thinking of starting. And I get it's a super flex, but now if I don't have to include BTJ, even it being a super flex, if there's any kind of life on the quarterback market on the waiver wire, I might actually do that, Dak for CMC, and just roll the dice that I could roll Henry, CMC, and my choice of Kamara or Aaron Jones at you in the fantasy playoffs. Wouldn't be too bad.
All right, I'm going to run down we're going to jump into the quarterbacks right now. Thank you for that question, Steve. We're going to jump into the quarterbacks right now, and I'm going to read off the list, and we'll kind of discuss them in general as we get into them. I think let's get that off there. Okay with CMC. I mean, it's just like, I guess. A lot of injuries out there, people. We see the words. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this. Quarterbacks that I'm looking at this week: Micah Drake May from New England, Bo Nix from Denver, Russell Wilson may be available out there if somebody dropped him or moved on from him, and Jameis Winston. Those four. And I did have a question here that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to bring it up. Do I hold Richardson? I'd rather pick up Wilson, Nix, or May. Is that a move you would be interested in?
I got to know who you're starting, because you're not. You probably have another quarterback on the roster that you've been playing, is my guess. I don't think I am making that move, quite frankly. Like, I still think we know it's in there. Well, we may not see it this year, right? But we know the potential is in there for Anthony Richardson because we saw a glimpse of it at the beginning of his rookie season. I would probably shoot the moon for the upside here, Bob. But if I'm going to go for those guys, I like Nix, Wilson, May in that order. May is still a rookie with, and granted, he's a big arm guy, but he doesn't have the array of weapons that I'm looking for. I think Nix has kind of found a way with his mobility to piece it together. He had a good fantasy outing last week without a single target to Cortland Sutton. So he can get it done with what he has around him. Wilson played well this week, but I feel like there's always going to be a nagging specter in the back of my mind that if he has 2 slow weeks in a row, they're going to go back to Justin Fields. I saw it on the face of Mike Tomlin in the first quarter of that game, as Russell Wilson is bouncing balls 4 yards short of his receiver. I had the feeling that Tomlin was going to pull the plug in the first half of that game, so I'm not comfortable going all in on Wilson. I would prefer to have Richardson on my roster, Nix, Wilson, May in that order after that.
I don't like to give too many forewarnings here, but there's going to be an article on the website, footballguys.com, tomorrow by Mr. Matt Waldman, the gut check this week, that will feature Anthony Richardson and compare his numbers through his first games here, where he's at in his career, compared to some other quarterbacks that you might be familiar with, maybe one that you saw last night throwing 5 touchdowns. Just kind of see where he stacks up over the course of the short term of his season. And I think you're exactly right. I wouldn't do that. I'm not interested in doing that either. I'm all in on Richardson. I feel like I have to recuse myself from every Richardson question because every answer for me heading into the season was Richardson. I've come to the point where I'm not playing him in every league. I'm not, running off the cliff and completely. But if it's even close, I'm playing Richardson for the most part.
If I could get Nix off the wire and not drop Richardson, if I have another body, I play Nix against Carolina this week all day. You kidding me? I mean, absolutely.
So is that your priority? So give me the order of you like those 4: May, Nix, Wilson, and Winston. What's the order there?
I would probably put it Nix number 1, Wilson at 2, May at 3, and Winston at 4. There's been no indication that Cleveland is going to join the modern era and have a pass offense that actually works, although I think it'll be potentially a little bit better. Jameis is a gunslinger, but he hasn't played a whole lot. He doesn't have the best bevy of weapons around him, Bob. I mean, we all thought, maybe not all of us, but it was reasonable to assume Jerry Jeudy would get some kind of a bump with Amari Cooper gone, and he got no bump. He stayed in the Jeudy zone is where he stayed. And, Cedric Tillman was the guy. Is that going to repeat every single week? I don't know. They've got a good tight end beyond that. I just don't trust their pass catcher. So I think Jameis is at the bottom of the list. And in part as well, because they could pull the plug on Jameis after a couple of bad outings and go the Dorian Thompson-Robinson route. In fact, there's a school of thought that Cleveland would prefer to pick the worst of the options because they're going to line themselves up to draft Shedeur Sanders or the quarterback of their choice in next year's NFL draft.
It makes perfect sense. I totally agree with that. All right. So like all these guys, Nix is the guy for me of this group. That's the rushing ability that's set him apart. There was a 3-game stretch where he was like quarterback 6. I think the numbers went down a little bit last game, but still he's been super effective at in his super flex. If I was looking at all these guys as my quarterback 2 in a super flex, it'd be Nix because he's the high floor play to me because of that rushing ability. So let's look at the running backs, Mike Dempsey. There's a good number of them available right now. I think the people are looking at Ray Davis, Jalen Warren, Roschon Johnson, Tyler Goodson right now. Which of those interest you the most, if any?
Tyler Goodson is going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight here pretty soon. So
and midnight could be coming.
The midnight may be coming this week for all we know with Jonathan Taylor. Now, you could get he's had low double-digit points in a PPR the last 2 weeks in a row, like around 11, 10 points, so you can get by with him as a flex for a week again if Taylor doesn't come back this week, Bob. This is tough between if it's a PPR, I'm probably going Jaylen Warren at the top because we've seen him have some significant value before. He had his most touches of the season this week. Of course, Najee Harris did as well, but that's because the offense now actually is moving, right? They're sustaining more drives. There's going to be more opportunities. So I'm probably in a PPR, I'm going to put Jaylen Warren at the top. And then I'm probably going to go Ray Davis, Roschon Johnson, closely bunched together. I may put Ray Davis at the top in a standard league here because he is getting utilized around the goal line. And, but you always have to worry about the specter of Josh Allen being the goal line back. James Cook is still going to get his carries in there. And so I'm not going to go overboard on that. Roschon is a guy that basically, if he scores, you're going to have a decent fantasy outing from him. But they do use him down there. And I think it's not unreasonable to put him in your lineup hoping to get 10 points, but it's more touchdown dependent. So that's more of a standard league move for me. I think Jaylen Warren's the top of this list.
So a guy that we haven't mentioned that I think we haven't mentioned because probably in leagues wherein he's being rostered, but Rachel wants to know a death claim, Justice Hill or Ray Davis.
Oh, I like Justice Hill now. I've got a lot of Justice Hill this season, man. And I've been very comfortable playing him even as a flex because, just a quick aside here, as I know everyone watched Monday Night Football. End of the first half, right? Like Derrick Henry's had the first few drives, whatever it is, and they weren't running it with him very much. But Justice Hill comes in to spell him for a drive. No big deal. But then they get in the 2-minute warning where they always play Justice Hill, right? In the obvious passing situations. And Buck and Aikman are beside themselves. Whoa, what's going on with Derrick Henry? He's standing on the sideline. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't know in all your production meetings, this doesn't come up that this is what they do in the 2-minute drill. And so you see Lamar is very comfortable going to him. They gave him a good number of touches. He got in the end zone. So I like Justice Hill. I would put still Jaylen Warren just slightly ahead of him, but I would slot Hill in probably next above the Ray Davis tier of guys we talked about.
Any concerns about the looming return of Keaton Mitchell at some point here? We don't know.
How looming is this?
Right. There's been talk of it.
No, there has, but I think Justice Hill has shown he's more rugged than Keaton Mitchell is, and he's an outstanding receiver out of the backfield. I don't see any reason for them to give Keaton Mitchell more than 3 or 4 touches a week, even if he gets that much, So for the time being, the conditions as they are right now, pick up Justice Hill, enjoy the productivity that you get out of him. Who knows? Keaton Mitchell could come back, have a setback. Could be at the end of the bench, could not come back, or maybe he comes back and you got to end up dropping Justice Hill to the waiver wire. But that's kind of the nature of if you're picking up a running back in week 8, that risk is out there unless you're talking about a starter who went down and the backup clearly is elevating to the number 1 spot.
Interesting. All right. Let's look at another question here. I saw, is it time to drop the lead running back of the Dallas Cowboys, Rico Dowdle?
I don't think so. I mean, if you got a better option, sure, but just to drop him because you're not satisfied, it's not that robust. It's a bad running team, but he is a starting running back, and I've got him on a good number of rosters. I don't usually play him, but that, this week we don't have any bye week concerns, but he run into a bye week concern. I've used him as a flex several times. If he gets in the end zone, all I'm really looking for is 10 points out of the flex at this point in the season, because everyone has attrition. We all dream we're going to have a 20-point player at every position and we're going to score 200 points a week. And it's never like that. If you can put up 125 in week 8, I was just looking at a league, Bob, where we play like an extra flex, and I scored like 126 this week. I was the 4th highest scoring team in the league. That's just the nature of attrition with fantasy football. So personally, no, don't drop down.
There comes a point where when I'm looking at free agents in general and looking to add to my rosters, especially when we get into the second half of the season. I mean, the league winners are few and far between. They're either already on your roster or you're not going to get them, or they're, somebody else has them and they're waiting for their emergence. You're looking for guys that can help you avoid zeros on weeks you're going to need them as we get into the heavy buys and you get more attrition. And I think some of the players we're discussing here, like Rico Dowdle, has a better than, a great chance of helping you avoid a 0. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's going to get starters touches, whatever that means. Another guy just who's probably available in a lot of leagues. He's not like a high-end guy, but a guy I put on the end of my bench is Kamani Vidal, right? Had a decent game last week. Really didn't do much last night. That offense didn't do a whole lot against Arizona with the LA Chargers. But, who knows with Gus Edwards if he's even coming back at this point in time.
Did you have Justice Hill on your football guys?
Oh, I see Lester talking right there. And amen, brother. That was I told you that was the key. I said it jokingly, right? Before the first week's games kicked off. I said the key to my whole team here is that $2 share of Justice Hill. And your boy is still alive in the Football Guys subscriber contest. And happy to have Joe Mixon back healthy the last couple of weeks. But yeah, Justice Hill for $2 in Football Guys was fantastic.
Mr. Scamper's laying down the groundwork for the questions, but Ori Falana does have a trade question, and I know Mike Dempsey loves these, so I'm going to bring this up right now. Should I trade Terry McLaurin and Dalton Kincaid for Nick Chubb and Brock Bowers? 14-man Dynasty League, 2 flex. Has Higgins, Downs, Juju, Pearsall, and Kincaid.
All right, Higgins, Downs, Juju, Pearsall, and Kincaid. Terry McLaurin's going to be probably the number 1 receiver for Jaden Daniels for the foreseeable future. Although I could see that team going, you know what? McLaurin's good. We got a lot of space here. Let's add an alpha if we get the opportunity, pushing McLaurin down a little bit. Brock Bowers may be the best tight end to have in Dynasty, right? And Kincaid has been a disappointment. And if he's a disappointment with as many vacated targets and opportunities as they had this year, is his pie really going to grow so much that you feel he's even a threat to the Bowers tier? So you get Nick Chubb, you're rolling the dice that he's going to stay healthy going forward. But I feel like, Bowers is probably the most valuable guy in this trade in Dynasty.
Yep.
McLaurin's probably next. But then I think depending on your need at positional need, and you don't have one at tight end because you're trading for Bowers, I probably would do that deal.
All right, fair enough. By the way, I see you out there, Mr. Nice Guy, doing your good work in chat. Appreciate you. All right, so let's look at the list of wide. By the way, if you're just tuning in, I'm Bob Harris. I'm a Football Guys. And that's Mike Dempsey. You can find him on the X machine at MD10_1010XL. As you can see underneath his name, you can check out all his stuff there. You can find him on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight with me, Bob Harris. And on Saturday nights on NFL Radio and the Fantasy Channel, it's a simulcast, kids. It's a technological marvel. I'm on with him then, too, from 8 till 11. We have a great time. Answer lots of questions. If you have call-ins, we can take all that as well. You can hear me also Sunday on the pregame show with Jeff Mans. Otherwise, you can find my work at Football Guys. Thursday, the Fantasy Notebook. Friday, my Polarizing Players collaboration with the great Gary Davenport. Saturday, my In and Out column, logic-based hot takes that sometimes don't work out as good as other times, according to Week 7. And tons of great stuff. You can hear Mike and I every weekday morning on the Daily Update podcast, which comes out about 5:30 in the morning. Kind of sets the table. It's 10 minutes of news, information, and fantasy analysis that lets you know what's going on, keeps you in the loop. I know everyone has busy schedules out there. You don't have time to dig into this as much as we do. We try and make it a little easier for you. So appreciate you if you listen to that, subscribe, download, do all those kind of things here, and like us here as well, because we need to be liked. Not really. Wide receivers, Mike. The list is pretty robust because there's a lot of openings, right? We've got San Francisco. We've got Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Jacob Cowing. In Cleveland, Cedric Tillman has entered the conversation. Jalen McMillan and Trey Parker and, should we say, Sterling Shepard in Tampa Bay. Romeo Doubs, if he's available out there. I see the numbers are surprising on him, how many leagues he's available in. And another guy I know Rachel had some great success with this week, Rashad Bateman in Baltimore, Trey Tucker in Vegas, and Troy Franklin. Let's start with that last name. Last couple games he's come on. He's the guy who played his collegiate football with the quarterback, Bo Nix, and it generated a lot of interest heading into the season. And obviously, rookie receivers aren't always quick to get off the schneid there, but he seems to be gaining a little ground. Is there any interest there for you, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, I've got probably a bid or two in on Troy Franklin in a couple of leagues this week, and I've got him in some dynasty leagues where he's on the taxi squad looking for an elevation right now. So, yeah, I mean, look, that's why, he fell in the draft to the 4th round, but he landed with, as you mentioned, his collegiate quarterback. So you're like, hey, there's a little something extra there potentially. I'm not a guy I'm ready to start. Right. There are a lot of guys on this list that I would start ahead of him, but I think there's a chance for him. If you've got the space and you don't have that immediate need that I've got to plug a guy in my lineup right now and I can afford to let this percolate for a few more weeks. Yeah, I think Troy Franklin absolutely should be on a roster in most 12-team leagues.
Yeah, I think so as well. And so, like, we're going to get a lot of questions. Who's the priority here? You know, when we're looking at the San Francisco wide receivers and the Tampa Bay wide receivers, Juwan Jennings, we've seen him get the job done. Also, he's hurt. We don't know if he's going to be back this week or not. That kind of clouds the whole situation. Deebo Samuel, by the way, sounds like he'll be heading back. He's out of the hospital today after dealing with the pneumonia. But how do we prioritize those two teams in particular? Let's start with San Francisco. Is it Jennings, Pearsall, like Cowing as an outlier? Or should we? Why are we perpetrating this Chris Conley slander? I don't know.
I'll tell you.
Well, how are you prioritizing those three?
It's still Jennings for me, man. And look, if you have to have a guy this week, I'm probably going to go looking at Jalen McMillan and putting my money there. But to me, it's Jennings, Bob, because like you said, he's shown us he can have high-end production. He did it with Ayuk on the field. So playing opposite Deebo, he's going to be in two wide receiver sets on the field more than Ricky Pearsall is, I believe. I think there's a school of thought that, hey, first-round pick Ricky Pearsall, this is almost like he's in training camp right now. And by the fantasy playoffs, he may be the guy to have. I still would cast my bet on Jennings because I've seen it. I've been there. I've done that. You got to dig into the injury history. I'll tell you, in the leagues that I play in, and I'm in 14 leagues and 6 of them are Dynasty. So, a lot of these guys are already rostered. But in the redrafts, I don't think Jennings is available in any of them. If you can get him, great. But, yeah.
It's possible people moved on from him either when he came up with the injury or Brandon Ayuk came back. The history of Jennings, if you go back and look, is pretty interesting, though, in games where I wish I had the numbers in front of me. I want to say it was 8 targets. In games with 8 targets, he had a minimum of double-digit points. I think it was like 11 fantasy points. So if he gets the business, he takes care of it. And so I'm more interested in that. I think, there's like an argument for Pearsall, but it's just I think you made all the right arguments, not necessarily against him, but just for the other piece available there. On the Tampa Bay side, what are the priorities there?
I think it's McMillan. He's the young guy, and I think Shepard is worth picking up as well. And you're probably going to get him a lot cheaper, honestly. But look, Todd Bowles has said, we like the guys we have in-house. Now that can change, right? I mean, he's not the GM. He doesn't make all these decisions. So that might actually help, though. Let's play the what-if game. They trade for Cooper Kupp. Okay, great. Coverage is going to roll to Cooper Kupp. And Jalen McMillan is going to be playing opposite him at least for the next 3 weeks, and he'll play when Mike Evans returns in 3 receiver sets, but that's a ways off, right, for Mike Evans to return. He's going to miss at least the next 3 games, plus the bye week, and there's a chance they don't trade for anybody. And McMillan is the lead guy for the next month, and then Evans comes back, and Evans plays that role I just talked about, Cooper Kupp playing, drawing the coverage. So I think McMillan has a strong case right there with Jennings. They're the top 2. I slightly favor Jennings because been there, done that, seen it happen. But you can't argue with the way Baker's throwing the football this year. And to think that, McMillan a couple weeks from now is a guy that everyone's saying is at least a wide receiver 3, should be started in every league, it wouldn't shock me. So he's definitely up there with Jennings, but probably number 2 overall on my list.
I see this question I have up here, have tons of injured wide receiver McMillan and Elijah Moore waiver ads. And I want to spin that Elijah Moore off into this question, which is Cedric Tillman, Shepard, or McMillan. So is Elijah Moore even someone on your radar? Is there just not enough meat on that offensive bone in Cleveland to satisfy your needs?
I see people pick him up and I'm like, huh. Like no interest. I have no interest whatsoever in Elijah Moore. Going to after watching the targets Tillman got and the productivity, why would you think that Tillman's behind Elijah Moore in the pecking order there? And they've invested in Judy. They traded for him. And it's been a miserable passing offense. Maybe it gets a little bit better if Jameis Winston comes in there with an I don't care attitude. I'm just going to throw this rock around and try to, win another contract somewhere. But I think Tillman is the guy to have there for sure. I'd probably go McMillan if you don't need the bump this week. If you're looking for 1 week, I might go Cedric Tillman over Jalen McMillan. But I don't know why that would be, because there's no one on a bye this week. So I'm probably going to still roll the dice in a much better offense. Then I'm going to get McMillan, and he's going to turn out to be a guy that, maybe a few weeks from now I'm comfortable putting in as a flex or a wide receiver 3. I think for the short term, if you pick up Tillman, you could probably plug and play in this week, hoping to catch lightning in a bottle again. I think he's definitely should be rostered after last week. He's a guy I put a ton of bids in for this week in a variety of leagues, but I think McMillan ahead of him, and I'd probably put Shepard in the 3rd spot. But I could see people saying, hey, look, I've seen Sterling Shepard play some pretty good football, and I'll take the number 2 in Tampa over the number 2 or even the number 1 with the Cleveland Browns. So I wouldn't fault anybody for preferring Shepard over Tillman. Do
you have any thoughts on that question about the slot while I'm looking up the slot rates of all these guys?
What's the question is? Slot question regarding the Bucs. Who gets more, McMillan or Shepard? Who gets it with Evans back? I think that ultimately McMillan will play ahead of Shepard. So I think that's, honestly, they're trying to say who is the direct replacement for Chris Godwin here. And, I think they're both going to play, but, Shepard's kind of a bit of a journeyman. And McMillan's a guy they invested a draft pick in this year.
So the slot rates up to this point, Shepard's been in there 29%, McMillan 24%, Trey Palmer 32%. So if there's anything to be read into that, that's what the history of this season tells us. But also that's probably very minimal snaps because there's been Chris Godwin who's been working heavily out of the slot.
Right.
So
yeah, so regardless, I'm taking McMillan over Shepard. And somebody just asked, how come no love for Trey Palmer? Look, there's nothing wrong with picking him up and taking a flyer and seeing how it all shakes out. But I feel like now we're getting down to that range where, we're going to see him have a big game, maybe, or a decent game. We went the wrong way. I think you got to ride it out a little bit here. Have the courage of your convictions. Pick the guy. Palmer's the guy for you. Go ahead. You'll get him much cheaper, probably certainly than you'll get McMillan, maybe cheaper than you get Shepard. So if that's the guy you have a hankering for, nobody says we're going to be 100% on our predictions here, trying to see the future.
We did, Zare, and Zare Kansabedian in the chat. Going to have to get him on this show, our football guy colleague. Bubs or Wilson worth to pick up with Olave still in the concussion protocol. Should we throw Marquez Valdez-Scantling into that fray?
There are places I'd throw Marquez Valdez-Scantling. It's probably not into a fray where I'm looking to get fantasy points out of a guy. Like, I don't know. I mean, you can go either way with these guys here. Bub Means last week, Wilson, it's not a great offense right now. And Chris Olave will come back, but I'm only interested in playing him if Derek Carr's back. Spencer Rattler at quarterback. I mean, you're taking your chances here. I'm probably, I don't know. I'm invested. I got a few shares in Bub Means, so that's kind of where I've cast my lot. And I don't like the MVS thing. He might have a big touchdown catch somewhere along the line, and everyone's going to go, ooh, I remember how fast he is. But I can't imagine he's walking into a better situation than he had in Buffalo, even though, it's not like they had a bunch of alpha receivers up there, proven guys. So he couldn't crack an egg. MVS is better left to somebody else.
By the way, we kind of mentioned this, but again, don't count on Jennings this week. The talk is that this is exactly right. They got a bye coming up. So that's always something to be mindful of. I had another question here that I liked an awful lot. I don't think they're doing that. This one right here. Would you prioritize any of these receivers over Jennings this week? Downs, Jacoby Meyer, Dubs, or Tolbert?
Yeah, okay. I would say for short term, Romeo Doubs is probably the guy. But will you be shocked if Jaden Reed and Christian Watson have big games this week, or Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks and Dobbs or Tucker Kraft, or because the Jags can't stop the tight end? And I mean, I could see Dobbs having 2 catches for 13 yards because that's kind of the nature of the up and down with 4 comparable wideouts, maybe not comparable, but capable wideouts. Over Jennings, I mean, Downs, I just feel like Anthony Richardson kills him right? We see it when he plays with Flacco. Man, you can't take him out of the lineup. But when he plays with Richardson, he had one catch for minimal yards this week.
It's true, but you and I talked to James Boyd at The Athletic during the summer, and all his evidence was based on what he saw of practices with Anthony Richardson as the quarterback. He was telling us then that Downs was going to be it was entirely possible that Downs would lead that team in catches. So there was some kind of connection there during the summer. I know it hasn't translated yet. And look, I mean, I'm like wish casting every positive thing I can for Anthony Richardson, but I don't know that it's a lost cause. I do think for right now, like if I knew Jacoby Myers was playing, I'd love to have him. He's an easily overlooked guy. Finished as wide receiver 24 last year. Dubs I would rather have right now. Tolbert, probably not.
I don't see. I kind of actually like Tolbert a little bit there. But Brandon Cooks gets healthy, and then
we're a week or two away.
Right, he's got 2 more games he's got to miss on IR. As far as that goes, I mean, look, I understand what you're talking about because I heard all the same things that you did on Downs. Right, we were on the show together, right? And it's just that there's been no semblance of chemistry once we've gotten to the regular season. So that to me is a scary thing. I don't know. I've got him in a bunch of leagues, and I don't feel like I can play him at the moment. I think if you can get by the next 2 weeks, I mean, if it's critical, and I get it, if you're struggling, sometimes you got to get that win. You got to get a guy who's going to help you immediately, and that's fine. And we don't know if Myers will be back this week. Maybe Downs will be that guy, even though he's questionable on the injury report every week. He plays and he shows up. But if I can wait it out for a couple weeks, Jennings is still my choice among all these.
Good question from Zari. Who has better odds of being a league winner, Pearsall or McMillan? I know you and I were talking about this before the show, a little bit about Pearsall, maybe emerging as we get into this as more of a factor. I mean, obviously San Francisco liked him enough to select him in the first round of the NFL draft. They have some notion that he's capable, but I feel like the Buccaneers offense is playing well enough, and definitely Baker Mayfield's playing well enough for McMillan to have the better chance of being a league winner at this point. Would that be your assessment, or do you see it the other way?
Totally agree. McMillan has a chance to have a month where he is the Bucs wide receiver 1. And then when he comes back, I think he'll be no worse than their wide receiver 2 to Mike Evans. And that's not a bad spot to be in the way that Baker is throwing the ball. Again, now look, if the Bucs trade for a receiver, and we can't know that, they said they're not going to, or at least they've indicated that, then it changes things. But I don't know that that's going to happen. Ricky Pearsall, in my opinion, is going to be playing behind Jennings this year. 2 receiver sets. It's going to be Jennings and it's going to be Debo. Presuming everyone's healthy, I think he is a wide receiver 3 at best, and you still have Kittle to contend with. And if McCaffrey comes back, now you got 2 running backs that are going to need touches. And so Ricky Pearsall's a talented guy. I like him in Dynasty. I like him as a player. And I'm not a University of Florida fan by any stretch. And I really like his talent. But I would absolutely agree with you that McMillan is more likely to be the league winner.
This is a question I'm sure you will appreciate. Are there trade candidates we're trying to stash now? Thielen, Herbert, DeAndre Hopkins, who kind of came up lame at the end of the game or got benched, whichever. It sounds like they're saying came up lame. But whatever, there's been talk of trade potential for him. Any of these players that you're looking to stash right now?
None of those guys excite me that much. I haven't. If we're maybe we're talking about Khalil Herbert. I must be talking about Khalil Herbert, right? Okay.
I'm sure it's Khalil Herbert.
I see Herbert, and I'm like, why would they trade Justin Herbert?
Khalil is out of sight, out of mind. Like I keep thinking at some point, like we've been talking about this since the summer, that Khalil Herbert looks like he has a Dallas Cowboys jersey already waiting for him. But
yeah. All right, but somebody just asked about, hey, should we drop Rico Dowdle, who's currently starting for that team, right? Now, you can argue maybe Khalil Herbert's more talented. Fine.
Maybe.
I don't mind stashing. Look, you stash anybody you like. I don't have any. Like I told you earlier, I'm stashing guys like Blake Corum. I'm stashing young, healthy guys that are on a team that are one move
contingent upside.
Right, that have potential significance. Like Thielen is an older guy. I'm not sure, when is he going to be healthy and how quickly is he going to adapt to a new offense and where is he going to go if he does get dealt? What is really the market? If Thielen's not healthy at the moment, who's going to trade for him? We're 2 weeks out now from the trade deadline.
Right.
DeAndre Hopkins has shown us nothing. Now the quarterback play has stunk there, but I feel like he got old quickly. there. So I out of those guys, I'd probably say Khalil Herbert, because I do think, you get a running back, it's more instinctive position, right? Know the blocking scheme, the basics of the blocking scheme, and go out there. We're going to hand you the ball and just take over on instinct. So I think we've seen it many times, Bob. League-winning running backs emerge out of nowhere. You and I used to go through the history of guys that we've won leagues with. It's crazy, right? So to me, that kind of move, like Khalil Herbert, nobody's looking to get him. You get him for a first-come, first-served pickup. You let him sit there. As long as you don't need that space. And, I always find like I have a spot for a week or two that I can stash somebody, and then I end up needing space because of bye weeks or injuries. But if you have that space, he's the top of that trio for me.
Before we get into the tight ends here, another receiver question. Deep Dynasty League. We know something about those. Deep IDP Dynasty Leagues also, we know something about. Simi Fehiko, worth dropping an IDP flex for as a let's see if he's given a chance pickup, or wait to see if Cup doesn't have to move in a trade first.
Yeah, I mean, I was going through a league looking for receivers in a dynasty league, and he was available, and I put a bid in on him, and sure, why not? I mean, it's deep dynasty, stash him and see what happens. I mean, he's got a quarterback who's quite capable, but Jim Harbaugh has shown us he's all about running that football, man. So, I don't know what the ultimate ceiling is, but things change, Bob, right? Guys get traded, other guys get hurt, coaches get fired. I'm not saying Harbaugh's anywhere close to that. I don't think he is, and nothing like that. But yeah, I think absolutely. Fajoko's a guy that I would expect to be rostered in most 12-team dynasty leagues.
All right. So let's go to the tight ends, Mike. The list to me is not huge because it's tight end. Hunter Henry is the leading piece. He's probably been dropped and picked back up multiple times. Probably time to pick him back up. By you, by me. Kate Otten is one that I know has not drawn a lot of favor from you, but maybe that's changing. Noah Fant. Well, Jonnu Smith coming off a big game, and the imminent return of Tua. And Jatavian Sanders is the guy I throw up on this list every week because he's just playing just good enough to get my attention.
He's coming along, right? He's started to pick up, and I've got him stashed on a dynasty taxi squad, and I'm very happy about that progress. Kate Otten's outlook changed drastically last night. Kate Otten caught 8 for 100 last night, man. I mean, Baker's going to keep throwing the football. Those running backs are going to get a bump. You and I were talking about that earlier before the broadcast here. And, we saw it last night. Rashad White's a capable receiver. I think they're going to rely on him and Bucky Irving more. Sean Tucker will be a fly in the ointment at times. But, yeah, I think Kate Otten actually maybe jumps up ahead of Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry would have been the easy choice for me on this list last week for the rest of the season. And I still think he's a good option because you look at New England, they don't really have anybody that is commanding targets in that wide receiver group. And Drake May showed you last week or the last couple weeks, he's very content to throw it over the middle of the field. Rookie quarterback, we all know that drill. But I would probably put Kate Otten just because of Baker Mayfield being the quarterback and how well he has played and how many touchdowns he has produced this year at the top of the list with Henry, the clear number 2. You know me with Jonnu, man. I don't buy it with Jonnu. This didn't happen with Tua. Okay, when Tua comes back, he's going to be getting the ball to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle down the field. You got those running backs to feed. Yeah, Jonnu will have a week here or there where he pops up, and that's fine. I'm not that interested.
Turns out tight end, that's a thing, though. that's a thing. And trying to predict these weeks. I mean, you could say the same of Henry. I think a guy like Otten is a more consistent, albeit not as high-end producer, right? You don't get those same spike weeks, or we haven't seen it yet. Maybe we see it more
this week, right? With the injuries.
Right.
So
what about Noah Fant, who seems to be coming on a little bit?
Yeah, I picked him up in our Pros with Joe's league last week. We didn't play him, but we stuck him on the bench. And that league is all flex, right? You play a quarterback in 8 or 9 flex, whatever it is. It's pretty deep. And so a guy who can get you 10 points, he wouldn't be a guy, again, he's not a guy I want to play every single week. These are matchup guys now. I think you could roll with Otten or Henry as your primary tight end and say, okay, you know what? It's not super high end, but I can live with that because they're going to have a defined role every single week. With Fant, you've got all the receivers you got to feed. You got Kenneth Walker there. Now, maybe for the short term, if DK Metcalf misses a game, he's fine for a 1-week plug-in. But again, nobody on a bye this week, so I don't know if you need that many 1-week plug-ins. Jatavian Sanders is an interesting guy, but Bob, I don't know in redraft if I'm ever going to be able to trust anybody outside of Deontay Johnson in that Carolina passing game.
Right. And so it's interesting because we just had a question. And so, we're generally not doing start six questions on Tuesday night because we don't know what the hell is going to happen. But in this case, I think this is interesting because it's something you and I talked about earlier today. Start Romeo or Deontay Johnson in a half point because we don't know about Andy Dalton. I think the reporting on this. So if you didn't hear, Andy Dalton was in a car accident with his family today. Nobody was taken for emergency treatment at the time. So I'm guessing it was okay. But let's just say the off chance it's Bryce Young week. Bryce Young time again in Carolina. What are you doing with Deontay Johnson?
Well, if I have an option like Romeo Doubs, I'm considering benching him, right? But let's be fair here. Andy Dalton did play this past game, right?
He did, yes.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson did have one catch for 17 yards in that game, right? I was working, and I'm like, is he hurt? What's going on? Why is Deontay Johnson not scoring any points? So I feel much more comfortable with Dalton at quarterback.
I feel I do too, but I felt, I think I've been saying the same thing since Andy Dalton came into the league. You don't know who's showing up, the red rifle or the redheaded stepchild any given week. He's been more of the red rifle this year, but those bad weeks are going to be mixed in. But I feel like that's the same for every player. It's just easy to pick on a target of opportunity like a guy like Dalton. Just one more here. I think we kind of hit on this going back to wide receivers, but I think this is I'm probably doing this.
What's that? The trade? Drop Josh Downs, pick up
Josh Downs for Jalen McMillan,
or the waiver move there?
Yeah.
That's one that can blow up in your face, right? If you need immediate help, yes, right. I think McMillan ascends to the top of the depth chart immediately.
Our love for Downs, though, makes this worth.
It does, and we've seen him have the big games, but they come with Flacco. So, and we're not going to get Flacco unless we get an injury, and we're not rooting for an injury for Anthony Richardson.
Rooting for Anthony Richardson injuries, not allowed in this spot.
I mean, if it was Flacco at quarterback rest of the way, or if it was Downs on the Bucs, I'd take Downs all day over Jalen McMillan. But that's not the circumstance. This is more a bet on Baker Mayfield than it is on either of these wide receivers right now.
I've got a trade here. Traded Jacobs for DJ Moore plus a mid-round pick. It's a 3-player keeper league. Needed a wide receiver bad. Still have Kamara, Hunt, Hubbard, Bigsby. That's fine. This is the best you could get. Is it an L?
I don't know if it's a W, honestly. I trust you that you shopped it and it was the best you could get. I feel like Jacobs is a little bit more valuable than DJ Moore simply because, week to week, that Chicago passing game has some inconsistencies. And, they put up a bunch of points on Jacksonville 2 weeks ago, and DJ Moore did practically nothing in that game. But I don't think it's an L. I just don't think it's a slam dunk win. I can understand why you did that. And I hope that Kamara and Hunt stay healthy for you because Chuba could lose value as the season goes along. And Bigsby's value, I think, will fluctuate week to week when ETN is healthy.
Drop Richardson for Tua, starting Baker at the moment.
If you got Baker, that's okay. I can roll the dice on that as well. Although I don't expect Tua to be like a top 10 guy every week, but you can't deny the weapons, right? And he clearly can connect with Tyreek Hill down the field, and Richardson's not connecting with much of anybody right now. Right. So in that case, the fact that you have Baker, and not just some middling other guy, Baker's, and granted, Baker's value is going to be in flux a little bit here too. I would probably make that move though in that circumstance.
Sorry, throwing this out there. Darnold at LA or Kyler versus Miami this week, given the way Petsing is operating its offense. I feel like we're getting on Kyler breaking off a long run to pay off. I just wanted, whether you like one better than the other, I don't disagree with that. I do the podcast every Monday with Matt Waldman. You people should listen to it. I can't say the name of it here because sorry, Joes don't cover it. But Matt Waldman is kind of like, on the Kyler Murray overrated camp. Where are you at, Mike?
I don't know if he's overrated or not. Tell me about production, right? I don't care if he's a good player in reality when it comes to this kind of stuff. And he did have the long touchdown run last night. But outside of that, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a rumor most of the time. And so I would take Darnold. Darnold's been really good this year, fantasy-wise. He's been absolutely fine in the 20s pretty much every week. And he's got Justin freaking Jefferson, who is not a rumor. He's legit. And, man, imagine if that team now, Darnold playing the Rams, Bob, is interesting because the speculation is, could the Vikings be interested in Matt Stafford? Darnold may be playing this week to prove
his job.
That, hey, I am worthy. If I beat Stafford, you can't be kicking me to the bench or swapping me to LA in this year. What a blow that would be to Sam Darnold to finally get it figured out, to lead his team to a near perfect record and get sent off to the LA Rams if they are cleaning house.
So, but since the speculation is out there, what do you think about this move from the Vikings perspective? Is this a smart move, or is this like just such a huge gamble? You've got a situation ongoing that's had some success, coming off a loss.
Look, if I'm the Vikings, I'll double down. Give me Stafford and Kupp. Now we're talking. Now I could see them as a Super Bowl champion. You get Stafford with Jefferson and Kupp, and Addison is the 3 in Minnesota. I don't know why I said Washington there, but I would like it. It would I think it would be right now. It'd be better for Stafford because those guys haven't been able to stay in the lineup with him. But I don't know. We hear a lot of these speculative deals that never come to pass.
Mr. Scampers knows how we roll on defense. When we're streaming them, we're picking on quarterbacks. How much does the return of Tua and the presumed upgrade to Jameis change your view of the top 2 offenses we're attacking?
Well, I'm attacking Carolina still. So Jameis will throw the ball to the other team. You may have heard of this, right? So I don't think it's this massive upgrade. Jameis is not super mobile. Even though Deshaun Watson is not the guy he used to be, I believe he's more mobile at this point than Jameis Winston is. So I still think Cleveland is an offense that you can absolutely pick on. Miami will be a different story if Tua's back in there. It's easy to pick on him with Tyler Huntley. And our theory is just pick up the shakiest quarterback. That's it. The guy is most likely to have ball security issues, either throwing it or hanging on to it in the pocket.
As long as the defense with some disruptive playmaking capabilities, not all defenses are built the same. And so there's that. Speaking of IDPs, Josh Pascal is a deep defensive end rest of season.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I mean, I don't have any particular affinity for him, but yeah, why not? I'll be honest with you. I do play a lot of IDP. All my dynasties are pretty much full IDP. I think 7 is the fewest I start in any of them. Most of them play 11, but I do tend to get focused in on the guys that are on my roster, and I'll know the offensive players that are not on my roster from stem to stern. It's not always the case with the IDPs.
I think for this guy, the notion is you've got no Aiden Hutchinson, right? And so somebody's got to help fill the void. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, they're talking about we don't have enough pass rush right now. So are they going to try to make a move for a guy? And I could see that being the case. I don't think just because he takes Hutchinson's reps that he's necessarily going to be viable, but he's certainly worth rostering.
Mike is a damn fine guest. Sorry, you are correct there, sir. And one of your great assessments, as always. Appreciate that. So I think we've kind of run through this 100% Darnold over Stafford over Darnold. I mean, I think if from the Vikings fans' perspective, I think that's how they would see it for sure.
Well, yeah, you could say for the Vikings, sure. But Geno Smith is never going to amount to anything, right? I mean, that Rich Gannon guy is nothing but a cast-off journeyman until he won the league MVP and almost didn't throw an incompletion that year, it felt like. I mean, things change. Stafford, by the way, was always a fantasy force, but he wasn't a winner until he got to LA, right? So, if you're talking about from an NFL perspective, you're probably right. I mean, Stafford's won a Super Bowl. Darnold's got a very limited sample, but I don't feel like, Bob, that this is a fluke. I think he is under the tutelage of Kevin O'Connell, and that is what's bringing out the best in him. This guy is still incredibly young. He's young. I think he might be younger than Bo Nix is, and he's been in the league all these years. So, I think so. There you go.
All right, one last question. We'll get out of here. Has Anthony Richardson and then Jaden Daniels, 2 is on waivers. How much fab would you drop in a super flex?
A lot.
A lot of them. All right.
I wouldn't have let him sit out in Superflex. He should have been scooped and rostered at least for a couple of weeks, man. So yeah, I would. I'm not dropping those quarterbacks, but I'll find somebody that I can move, and I'm gonna push my chips into the center of the table, because then I could play Tua and Daniels when healthy. And right now we don't know if Daniels is even going to play this week. So you might need, imagine that, you might need Tua as the healthier option right here in week
the
8.
reporting today is that there's doubt that he plays, and that makes sense. I mean, I think
right. He's the franchise now.
Disappointing outcome given the matchup against Chicago and Caleb Williams, but they'll hopefully have other chances in many NFC championship games to do that. Mike Dempsey was the guest tonight. Follow him on the X device at MD_1010XL. Listen to Mike every day in Jacksonville on 1010XL. He does a fantastic radio show there, and he talks about the Jaguars, and the people there love it so much. Also, listen to him on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, the Football Diehards program, with his great co-host, Bob Harris. That's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to midnight. Saturday nights, 8 to 11 p.m. on the NFL radio channel and the fantasy channel. So good they play it in 2 places. How can you get away from that? Also, find me on the pregame show on Sirius with Jeff Mans on Sundays from 11 to 1 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and get all my work at Football Guys, the Notebook on Thursday, the Polarizing Players on Friday, the In and Out on Saturday. But most importantly, listen to me and Mike every day for 10 minutes. There's nothing better. Every weekday morning, the Football Guys Daily Update comes out. Subscribe to it on the podcast platform of your choice, or get to the website. We appreciate everyone coming. I always appreciate your time. I'll be back here Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for the Ask Me Anything live stream, and look forward to that. And Mike, I'll look forward to talking to you again tomorrow night.
No, you won't, but that's all right. We'll do it anyway, and go Yankees. Thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody.